Hey, what's up, guys? So I'm not gonna lie, this has been quite a week for me. So I have been friends with Mike-EL today, who's our co-host, and I will very much properly introduce soon. But Mike and I have been friends for a while now. I want to say like 6 years, maybe 7.
Something like that.
Something like that. And I just realized that we are both big Buffy fans.
Yes. I can't believe we never talked about it.
Well, okay, to be fair, that's my fault because I only got into Buffy since the start of COVID. And so I've always seen Buffy, syndicated on TV, but I never actively invested and followed in it.
Sure.
And since maybe like January, I have actually started watching it on Amazon Prime all the way through. And first of all, amazing. I'm like kicking myself for never watching it, but also it's kind of one of those things where maybe it kind of just missed my age group, whereas maybe I was just young enough that I was like a little scared of it. But like now watching it now, I'm loving the 90s aesthetic, I'm loving the practical effects and the makeup. Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed. And so the episode I just watched last night, to give you a reference of where I am, it wasn't too much of an important episode. It was season 4, episode 9, which is it's just a random episode basically where Willow casts a spell and like Buffy and Spike kind of have like this like betrothed engagement.
Yes. Yeah.
And so nothing like really not that big of an episode in the grand scheme of things. It was a one and done. But from my understanding from the Buffyverse, the next episode I'm watching is season 4, episode 10, which is Hush.
Oh, yes.
And I hear Hush is like an iconic Buffy episode.
Absolutely. Yes.
I'm so excited. I almost watched it yesterday afternoon. Then I was like, no, I can't watch it during the day. Like, I need everything to be perfect for season.
Yes, you have to. Yeah, you can't just have it on you got to be like, the drink has to be ready, the food, like no distractions, right time of day. You have to be awake. Yep.
Well, and from what I gather, because I don't know anything about what happens in the episode, I just know it's got an amazing villain. But I hear the episode, there's no dialogue. So I'm like, you have to be, right into it. And so
you have to be paying attention. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm very excited for it. I hear it's amazing. So far, and again, like, I don't want to like have it spoiled for myself. I've watched the first 3 seasons in full. I'm gonna have to say, I think season 3 is pretty freaking awesome.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Like I always knew that Eliza Dushku was in the show, and I just didn't know that was her trajectory with the character, where like I always kind of thought she would hang around and be like a casual hero that pops in like 5 episodes at a time and then disappears. No, she like goes full heel by the end of the season. Like she's a villain.
Right. Yep.
So I never like, again, I like kind of watched it in passing on syndication, but I never knew that. And so even for someone that, Buffy's been around for now over 20 years, that was like a nice surprise, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
But oh man, I love that dynamic. I love that she was working for the mayor, and he ended up being a very surprisingly satisfying villain as well.
What a great character, eh? Oh my God.
Yeah. It hit all of the beats, and like the scale got bigger with the school at the end of the season. Like, I don't know. Season 3 like sat with me in the best way possible. I'm like, that's how you do TV.
Well, that's the thing is like, I'm actually kind of close to where you are because I only started watching it 3 years ago. Yeah, like I got into it because of Jolie and another friend of ours, as well as other people, always talking about it, right? And I always knew it was there. Like I remember when it was coming out, when I was like in my 20s, I think. Like I used to collect Entertainment Weekly, and I remember like every once in a while Buffy would be on the cover, or there'd be like a guide to Buffy. And I remember I'd keep those issues because at the back of my mind, I thought, I've never seen the show, but I know one day I'm going to watch it. I know I'm going to like it. Okay. So then years go by, and I think Jolie had the box set for Firefly. So I watched that in like a week, and have you seen Firefly?
I have, but I've only saw it when it first came out. So
okay. It's incredible. I love Firefly. And then, I've seen, Cabin in the Woods. I've seen, what's the musical, Doctor something? There's a web series called, wow, if anyone's watching, this is embarrassing. I don't remember what it's called, but like Joss Whedon did this web series starring, what's his name? I'll have to look it up right now because the people right now are going to be criticizing us. Hold on a sec. But anyway, I watched that. and I was like, well, this is amazing. Dr. Horrible, Dr. Horrible's
Oh,
sing-along blog. Check it out. It's amazing. Okay.
yeah.
And then, I mean, whatever. And then it was just like one day I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm going to watch this. And I think this was because Jolie and I were roommates, as you know, and this was before we become roommates. I started to watch it, and she just came in again. Like for her, it was like the thousandth time, but she came in around season 2 or 3, and we just started watching like at least 1 or 2 episodes a day we watch, right?
Yeah.
And first of all, some people are like, "Oh, you just have to get through season 1." No, season 1's great. I don't care what I love season 1. It was great, you know?
I liked it as a foundational season. I think 3 is better, but
Oh,
I don't hate 1.
Right, but 1 was fine. And
Yeah.
then like to me, first of all, as someone who's a superhero fan, is this not the best superhero show you've ever seen where it's like, superheroes sometimes take themselves a little bit too seriously, but Buffy does the opposite. It's like, no, let's just accept that this is ridiculous. Let's just accept that vampires are ridiculous, that robots are ridiculous, that all of this stuff, the sci-fi and fantasy, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but they still can do the drama between the characters right?
Yeah.
The characters are real, the comedy's real, so, I got nothing bad to say about it. I love it.
Have you noticed too, as you progress through the series, they do less one-off episodes, like less Monster of the Week episodes, and the episodes have become more just like integrated really well, like the character arcs. Less like they still have a couple every now and then where it's like Monster of the Week, but it's not as common.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
And also, I also find that at that time, like that was around what 2000 it started, I think.
1997.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was like just before the golden age of television, right? So X-Files had already been out, but this was before shows started having arcs, right?
Yeah.
So this was like one of the first. It goes ahead of its time, and as it goes on, it builds and builds and builds. And even though each season has got its own big bad, there's sort of an overarching story, and you're only on season 4, right? And just there's so much to come. It's amazing.
Well, I do know just from like pop culture, I know that Willow gets a very big arc of like next couple seasons. So I'm very excited to see that. I heard a lot of people kind of compare it to Dark Phoenix.
Absolutely. Yep.
So I'm very excited for that.
And Joss Whedon was definitely influenced by Chris Claremont and Dark Phoenix and New Mutants. And it's cool because if you go and watch the X-Men Evolution cartoon, there's some, not only are there direct Buffy references, there's actual scenes where, do you know what rotoscoping is in animation?
No.
Rotoscoping is where you just take live actors and you just draw over them. So that way the animation is fluid. So you're basically like you take someone dancing and you just basically trace it, but you convert it into animation, right? So the animation is completely fluid like a real person. So they did that with a couple scenes of like Buffy and Faith dancing and stuff like that. And they would just make it, Rogue and Kitty Pryde or whatever. And there's a couple times they do that. It's really cool.
That's actually, you know what? I can think of those scenes in Buffy that they probably rotoscoped.
Absolutely,
I can actually picture it in my head now. Yeah. Well, speaking of amazing television, welcome to the Full Volume Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts usually. This is Harvey Brent, and today you might be scratching your head and wondering why I'm joined by the amazing Mike-EL. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you for having me. Seriously.
Yeah,
this is great.
And today our staple G.I. Jolie, she is off today. She had some things to take care of that were rather important. So Mike said he'd hop on the podcast today with me and unpack the season finale of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So I'm much appreciative of that. Thanks, Mike. For
sure. And obviously, I feel terrible that Jolie couldn't do the season finale, so she'll have to maybe next week, the week after, she'll have to do her recap of this episode. So.
Well, I'm sure she's going to have some things to say, as do I.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sometimes I recap it. Jolie will have me recap it, or she'll recap it. I feel like I just have to go off on the bat, and I actually don't know what your take is for the entire season so far. Did you want to give the listeners maybe just a quick overview of your vibe of the season?
Sure. Okay, so let's put it this way. You guys started Full Volume mainly because of WandaVision, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I love WandaVision. I actually, it's funny because there seems to be a split, not 50-50, but maybe like 70-30 of people that love WandaVision and the people that hate it. But I find the people that didn't like WandaVision are more of the typical comic book fanboys that I didn't understand what was going on. It was so boring. Does it get any better? I actually preferred the early episodes when Wanda was stuck in like the sitcom stuff. That was more interesting to me, right? And as it went on, it was less interesting but still good. But I love WandaVision. Okay, so when this started, I kind of knew there's no way they can follow up WandaVision. And I do like the interplay between Falcon and Winter Soldier, but overall, to me, this has been more of a typical Marvel property to me than WandaVision. And that's my overall take.
Totally. Yeah. And I feel like, again, if you've listened to any of our past episodes of the Falcon and Winter Soldier, we've found it a bit of a struggle to get through, just for that sake, where it was like, it doesn't stand out from some of the Captain America films. It just it's just the aesthetic and the narrative, it's blending in so much that I'm like, what? Like, it's just it's not standing out to me. And so I don't want people to think that it's a bad show by any means. It's not. Is it as interesting as WandaVision? Personally, no. No. Is it as well done? No. Did it and then speaking to the finale, did it end as well as WandaVision? No. We can get to that in a minute, but I just want to say one thing about, for example, last week's episode, okay? Mm-hmm. So last week, from what I remember, okay, because 2 weeks ago it ended with John Walker killing the guy. Yep.
And then last week's episode, I don't remember what happened, but I just remember it felt like it ended halfway through, and it was kind of like a conclusion. And then you're like, oh, the episode's done. You're like, wait, there's still 30 minutes left. And then all of a sudden, Sam Wilson's back on the boat with his sister, and there's all this montage of them working, and I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Absolutely awful pacing last week.
Yes.
Like, frustrating pacing.
Yes. And the thing is I actually brought this up on Spidercast, and Becca and Becca and Josh were defending it, and I was like, guys, like, I'm not saying it was bad, but when you're watching a show, there's a sense of like, okay, this is the beginning, this is the middle, this is the end. But it's like, we already had the end. So what are we now? What is this? And it's like, it almost felt like they filmed the episodes one way, and then they decided later, oh, you know what? No, we have to combine these two and then add this part to this episode. And it felt like it ended halfway through, and then they just filled in the rest, right?
Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like Jolie agreed with me last week too, where it just felt so discombobulated. And what's worse is they did it to a show like this, which I already had such a hard time following because it just doesn't stick out. The only the narrative that I really grasped onto, and thankfully that was the only good thing about this week, was the actual subtext about racism in America. That's the only thing that I could really like get from like Sam's scenes with Isaiah Bradley.
Right.
At times he speaks to Bucky about it. But other than that, like the whole espionage side of this show does not stand out. And then they decided to cut it like that last week. Oh my gosh.
Right.
It was challenging for me to follow along. Like, and not that I'm an unintelligent person, but I'm just like, you guys, like, this is just, it's not standing out to me.
That's the thing, is a lot of times when you say something's confusing, people are like, "What are you, stupid? It's obvious." But it's like, no, I can figure out what's going on. I can decipher what's going on, but it shouldn't be so. And I'm not saying it's confusing, but it's just more meandering. It's like they don't know what the story is.
Yeah.
What focus is. So, and here's another thing. Let's just talk about subplots. Baron Zemo. What happened to Baron Zemo? Let's just build him up as the big bad for half the series, and then just ditch him, and now he's locked up somewhere. Like, talk about a letdown. I know you complained about Quicksilver. This Baron Zemo thing was far worse of a letdown.
I think I actually talked about that either last week or it actually might have been the week before, where I was like, you know what, Jolie? I bet you that they are going to completely drop Baron Zemo, and that's what they did.
Right.
And I was like, they're going to use him as a freaking plot device, and just use him to get the boys to Madripoor, do things in Madripoor. He was their in, and then, he's going to have some piss poor excuse for wanting to get rid of super soldiers, and then he is going to leave. And that's exactly what happened. I knew they were going to do that with him.
And it's just, there's such a thing as defying audience expectations and blah, blah, blah. But to me, it's like they're building him up in such a way that weren't you kind of expecting like a Hannibal Lecter type thing? We have to break out this crazy guy to help us catch these other crazy guys. So to me, it would have been so much more interesting if he would have pulled a double cross and killed somebody or did something. But he killed that one guy, the
Yeah.
scientist. But then they were like, "Don't do that again." That was it. Like come on.
Well, yeah, and that actually happened. I feel like again, maybe I'm jumping the gun a bit, but that kind of happens this week with John Walker, aka US Agent.
Yeah.
What in the actual hell? All of a sudden, in the final battle, he's fighting alongside
Right.
Bucky to help save civilians, and then like no consequences and just walks off. Are you kidding me?
Right. And they're like, oh, they were actually like trading quips with him. Like it should have been like a reluctant, like, okay, we'll let you help us, but then we're gonna kick your ass. But no, it's just like it's like they just dropped the ball on all these threads. It was really weird.
The only thread that I was satisfied with was again that conversation around race, and
Yeah.
that's the only thing I think that landed in the finale. Everything else, whether it was John Walker, Carly Morgenthau, even Bucky's resolution was poor. I'm like, what?
Right. Yeah. Oh man. Well, let's. Okay. So do you want? Yeah. Do you want to talk about John Walker? Because that was the worst.
It was the worst, but I also feel like in John Walker's defense, it's going to give us the most to talk about today.
Sure. And the thing is like, so I don't know if have you read. Because okay, I've read because this storyline is adapted from a few sources. One of them is when Captain America quits in the 1980s. I don't know if you ever read that story.
But I am aware of US Agent just
Sure.
outside of the reading, so I can roughly follow his trajectory.
Well, just for the record, if you get the chance, maybe we can review this somehow in a future episode. The original comic storyline is excellent. It starts in Captain America 332 and goes to 350. Basically, the government tells Steve Rogers, we own the name Captain America. We don't like what you're doing. So you either shape up or ship out. So Steve Rogers quits, okay? So Steve Rogers quits, and then they hired John Walker to be the new Captain America. But John Walker used to be a superhero named the Super Patriot, okay? And the Super Patriot was this nationalistic, over patriotic superhero, blah, blah, blah. He had these two buddies named Right Winger and Left Winger, okay? Yeah, it was pretty cool. And then I can't remember exactly what happened, but I think one of them became the new Bucky, and then he changed his name to Battlestar, and he was black, just like this guy, right?
Okay.
And so then John Walker is Captain America for like a year. In the meantime, Steve Rogers becomes the captain, and the captain wears a Captain America costume that's black. So black with the flag on it. It's a little bit different, but it's basically Captain America. So that goes on for a year. John Walker gets crazier and crazier and crazier, and then eventually Steve Rogers and John Walker fight, and then Steve Rogers becomes Captain America again. John Walker is like gives up. Then like 2 issues later, John Walker reemerges with the same black costume Steve Rogers had, and now he calls himself the U.S. Agent. And so
we got shades of that in this episode.
Right, shades, yes.
But yeah, it didn't follow the exact trajectory there. It's, in a way, it almost makes me wonder in a what if scenario, man, it would have been possibly really interesting to have John Walker be introduced in the MCU earlier and kind of set those seeds, maybe some antagonism with Steve Rogers and whatnot. That actually would have been kind of cool. But I also do love, the fact that it's Sam that kind of basically has to put him in his place. That's cool too. But it would have been interesting to see them play out that storyline because it does sound like an interesting, meaty storyline.
It's great. And the thing is the storyline with Sam is different. Like I haven't actually read it, but there's the whole storyline of Sam becoming Captain America, which they combined. And I haven't read it, so I can't say whether it's good or not. But you are right. It would have been ideal if they would have introduced John Walker earlier. And this is one thing I remember saying to Becca when Steve Rogers did his thing in Endgame and he basically retired. I was like, this is a cool story, but I would like to see Steve Rogers continue as Captain America. And Becca's like, well, no, I want to see a new Captain America. And I said, here's the problem. There's 3 Captain America movies, 4 Avengers movies. There's like 800 Captain America comics. There's a lot of stories they didn't cover. And this is one of them, right? Like, if they would have had a story, like, I'm not saying they could do a TV show, but if they would have had some way of introducing John Walker earlier, it would have been better. It would have been ideal, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think that would have been really cool and set those seeds earlier for like a turn as a villain. Because I will say, like, I actually have to admit, out of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I think the most interesting thing for me was John Walker's eventual villainous turn. Like I think they did set that up well. Did it land in the finale? No. But
No.
the first 5 episodes, I really was into this whole trajectory of descent into villainy. But it would have been cool to see him kind of riff off Steve Rogers and maybe one of the Captain America films earlier and have that set up. Is it like the end of the world? No.
No, no, no.
But I'm just saying it would be a cool what if.
Right. And the thing is yeah, I mean, it's never going to be exact, and they did what they could with what they had. It's just that considering how much they built up that finale with him being videotaped, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that's a great finale, but now you got to follow it up, and they really didn't. And it would have been so easy. Like even like I know, for example, with WandaVision, there was criticisms of the final episode, and one of the excuses was, well, we were kind of rushed, and we filmed this scene, but we cut it, and blah blah blah. Okay, fine, but it wouldn't have really cost more money to just have the characters not be happy with John Walker. Like they could have just had an insert of them being like, okay, and next time we meet, we're enemies or something. I don't know what, right? But by the way, you're still an asshole. But they just dropped the ball.
Very, very poor writing there, or very poor editing, or very poor story editing. Whoever did that done fucked up.
Right, 100%. Yeah.
But I mean, and again, usually, or I'd say half the time, Jolie and I go through the episode beat by beat. I don't even think this is an episode in which I can do that because it was so muddled. And granted, there's a lot of action. The action was great, fine. But everything was so muddled, and the narratives and the motives. At one point we have Sam and Bucky, fighting super soldiers. We have U.S. agent, John Walker jumping in there. And then, all of a sudden it's like a triple threat match, between the three sides. And then at the same time, all of a sudden we have, Carly Morgenthau fighting John Walker for a bit. And then it transitions into a fight with Sharon Carter. And it was so much that bled into each other. And it wasn't done well. And I maybe not done well, but not done effectively.
And that's the thing is even I don't usually pay attention to like set pieces and stuff, but I even thought that the final battle was a little bit cheap. And like when they walk into that like factory or whatever that is, like they're walking through that factory, and I'm thinking, what? Like I don't usually criticize sets, but there's such a thing as an effective setting for a final battle. And you think about a movie like, say, Terminator. They're in this robot factory with steam everywhere, and it's the setting sort of matches what the battle's about, and it looks good and it's cool. This is like, what, you couldn't afford a good set, so you just went into like a boiler room somewhere, and
that is it. That is the point right there to make, is that there is something to be said for iconic set pieces. Especially in like a climax of the culmination of a fight scene, there is something to be said about selling the severity of your story and the importance of the outcome with an iconic set piece. And this show did not accomplish that.
Right. Like even in X-Men, the first X-Men movie, I actually thought it was cheesy when Wolverine and Sabretooth were fighting on the Statue of Liberty. And then I found out later that Bryan Singer was like, oh, well, it's because the theme is, alienation and integration and this, that, and the other. And I thought, okay, at least there's something in mind. Yeah. But it still would have been, again, okay, so what's the theme here? It's racism, patriotism, it's national, blah, blah, blah. Do something, I don't know what, but think of something that like have it all be videotaped, have a crowd watching or something. I don't know what.
Just something not in a poorly lit boiler room too.
Right,
or like a poorly lit construction site for half of it. No, that was like, again, we have to maybe give some acknowledgement to the fact that half of this series was filmed during COVID. And I'm sure there's some unimaginable obstacles they have to deal with in keeping everybody safe. But
I know you got to be more creative, right?
Man, I don't know. Like, and again, I don't want to sound too negative. Like, again, all Marvel properties I like, including this one, but I would probably not watch this one again if I had the choice.
No. And whereas WandaVision, I could watch again tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do it tomorrow, but
Yeah, but soon. Yeah.
I would be curious to visit WandaVision like in next winter, and just be like, oh, how did this hold up? Especially right before Doctor Strange. That would be cool.
Sure. Yeah.
But honestly, if I had to rank this series and against all the movies, I would say it's like second last out of every single MCU
Ooh.
film and TV show ever. Well, let's not include like, Agents of Shield, none of that budget stuff. I'm
Sure.
just talking like mainline
Marvel
MCU.
Studios, yeah, mainline. Oh man, yeah. Like if you were to, yeah, I would say like the bottom is usually people say like the Hulk movie with Ed Norton
Or Thor Dark World.
or Thor Dark World. That's pretty dull.
Yeah.
And then those are pretty much the bottom of the barrel. This one's close to it. You're right.
I think this is like, yeah, second last or third last down there. So I don't think it's the worst, but it's close. But again, I don't want to sound too negative. Like I would give the show, like if I had to rate it out of 100, I'd give it like a 68, like not,
Yeah.
It's not a failure. It's just
No.
not particularly amazing at what it's trying to do.
And the thing is like even when I saw the trailer, I was like, because I'm very skeptical because sometimes trailers like the Guardians of the Galaxy trailer didn't look good to me, but I love the movie. So I didn't want to prejudge it too harshly based on the trailer. But when I saw the trailer, I was like, okay, what are they going for here? It's clearly like a Lethal Weapon buddy cop type thing. But I still felt like all of that humor, it felt like they wrote the script and then they had another guy come in and go, okay, add a joke here, add a joke here, add a joke here. And even though the jokes were funny, it felt like inorganic the way that it would oscillate between serious and funny, And even in this episode, I laughed out loud after Sam Wilson did the speech, and then he was walking towards Bucky, and Bucky's like, "Oh, sorry, I was texting. All I heard was black guy and Shield." That was hilarious. But like a lot of the humor didn't land as well, and it just felt like shoehorned in.
Totally. Yeah, I agree with you. The humor wasn't. It was tolerable, but it wasn't as effective as something like Guardians of the Galaxy, where it's just so organically built into the energy of that movie,
Right.
So yeah, I feel like I'm not going to be able to give like an effective recap today because it's just I feel like what we're doing is good, where we're breaking down different aspects,
Right.
So actually, maybe I wanted to get your opinion because this is the one part of the show that I think maybe stuck the landing. How did you feel about the resolution of this whole reconciliation of the idea of Sam taking over the mantle of Captain America, what that represents in terms of patriotism and racism in America, and how, he brought that forward? How do you feel like, the show handled that conversation about, Sam taking over that role, but also, acknowledging the fact that, America as it is not a welcoming place for Black people?
Well, I think that's probably the strongest part of the show, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously in the real world, a speech like that would not have been so conveniently in front of so many cameras at just the right time. But for what it is, for a scripted TV show, I thought that speech at the end was great.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, it's a little bit of the senator that he was arguing with. It's a little bit of a straw man, like, and again, with a perfect script, there would have been an equally as effective speech against what he was saying, but that's fine. But what he was saying was great. Also, the timing could not be more perfect, right?
Yeah.
Considering what just happened this week and what's continuing to go on every day. I mean, there was a time, I think, in Marvel Comics where in the 90s, especially, where they basically stopped talking about real issues. They stopped talking about race. They stopped talking about drugs. And I'm glad that Marvel's dealing with it because, you could argue there's a better way to do it, but why not just come out and say it? Like the racism is there.
Yeah.
And when he says, they're never going to accept a black man as Captain America, there's some truth to that, right? So why not just address the elephant in the room, right? So I thought that was really well done.
We've had as a society, we've had a real life parallel with that when Barack Obama was elected president.
Right.
You could argue that the presidency, the actual sitting president, is supposed to represent Americans, and a lot of people did not accept him.
Yep. 100%. You're right.
There's precedent there in real life too. But again, when we're talking, Marvel, when we're talking comics, I love the way they handled that because they're not wrong in their interpretation of it because we saw it in real life with Barack.
Yeah, 100%. And also, I know that some people don't like retcons, but the Isaiah Bradley thing,
Hmm.
That's a comic book story too. What was it called? Captain America Truth, I think. And I'm like, I'm glad they brought that in. What a great idea. It's like if this was real and if it was started in the 1930s, that's probably what they'd have done. They would have experimented on black people first, right?
There actually is a real life precedent for that as well. And I don't know if you've heard of this. It was either in the 50s or the 70s, where they were oh gosh, was it it was a vaccine or a drug for syphilis or something, and they experimented on black people.
Right. And I can't remember the name of that. I've got
Yeah,
the name somewhere, but is it it begins with the T.
it does. It does. And,
Tuskegee
ah,
experiment or we sound like idiots.
I know. I
Tuskegee.
apologize to listeners, but
Yeah.
oh, I hmm.
Tuskegee. Tuskegee.
Yeah.
Tuskegee syphilis study. That might be it.
And then it took place, I think, was it is somewhere in the central US? Like, was it Kansas or that's gonna bother me. There was some sort
So
of
I'll just read the one paragraph. The purpose of the study was to observe the natural history of untreated syphilis. Although the African American men who participated in the study were told they were receiving free health care from the federal government, they were not. So yeah, it was an ethically abusive study. Basically, yeah, like you said, performed on black men.
yeah, in Alabama. Okay, it was Alabama.
Yeah,
Oh, so anyway, so that's another though, like, this kind of brings me to this is good storytelling where nothing that Marvel, the themes that Marvel presents to us, they didn't make these narratives up. These are things that have already existed. This is
right.
the perfect example, the Tuskegee syphilis study. Like, that's a perfect representation of this whole experimentation on black people to create the first ever Captain America quote.
Right.
So the show did a fantastic job in bringing those parallels again to light.
And the thing is I know there's people that think the best way to deal with racism is to not talk about it. I think that is idiotic and childish.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's important to talk about it because when you don't talk about it, you get people that think either it doesn't exist or that it was so far in the past that it doesn't matter. But like you just said, the Tuskegee experiment was from 1932 to 1972. So this is
Okay, yeah.
recent. I was born in 76. This is recent history. So it's dangerous because if we try to bury our heads in the sand, it's like that old saying, those that ignore the past are doomed to repeat it, or those that don't learn from the past are doomed to repeat it. And that's exactly what this is a case of. So I think it's very important to talk about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I was actually thinking too, if we ever could, we should get more like people of color actually guesting on full volume podcast.
100%, yeah.
I'm gonna have to
And
talk
everything we do, yeah, with Spidercast, everything, yeah.
yeah, that's something that I'm gonna have to talk to GI Jolie about and see if we can, definitely invite some more people with different perspectives because maybe there's something, we're missing out on that,
Sure.
we could help communicate that message. We have a platform to do it.
Absolutely, you're right. You're right.
So, but anyways, yeah, I think that was really well handled in the show. Another thing another aspect of the show, so I think it was very poorly done, but I'm excited to see where it goes, is Sharon Carter as the power broker.
Yes, I didn't see that coming.
Oh,
Uh, I,
no way.
well, not really. No, only
Yeah.
because like, see, I know Sharon Carter, and I don't know if this is based on a comic story, but I know Sharon Carter as Steve Rogers' girlfriend. And like, yes, she is a Shield agent or whatever, but to me, she's like the Lois Lane. So I don't know, maybe I'm missing a piece of the puzzle, but I just didn't see that coming. So
So yeah, funny you should mention that. Jolie and I had a chat about that on the show one of these weeks, and I said I think it might have been the week that they went to Madripoor, and I said, I'm like, I bet you dollars to donuts, Sharon Carter is going to be the power broker, and it wasn't so much, it was based not on comic history at all. It was based on writing because they
okay,
kept saying the power broker, him, and I was
right,
like,
okay,
they keep emphasizing this masculine pronoun. It's not going to be a man. And so it ended up.
nice. Hmm.
So I was actually thrilled. They didn't do a good job revealing it. They did a very poor job revealing it. They did a terrible job, with the final showdown with Carly Morgenthau. And I don't know what the hell that was. I'm still not really clear on Sharon Carter's motives per se. Um,
Right.
I guess she's just, super chapped about the fact that she's been exiled from the States. And do you want to take it from there? Because I don't know.
Well, yeah, it's like you mean like the post credits ending and all that stuff.
That part actually gives me hope for the future, because
Okay.
I think I'm excited to see where that goes. But why in the first place would she decide to go down this road of villainy?
I don't know. I guess like a power, like, she feels disempowered, so this is her way to get power. Maybe I really don't know.
Exactly. And I think they handled that fairly poorly. There is a conversation about it with Carly in the showdown, but it's not effective. And
Right.
I hate to say, but they could have been a little more dramatic about it because it would have
Right.
helped really relay the message to me as a viewer. So I think it was handled poorly, but I am very, like, based on the post-credit scene with Sharon Carter, I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes her a more interesting character, right? Like, I think one of the best things about WandaVision and Winter Soldier is they've taken supporting characters, right? That could have been easily forgotten, and they've brought them back and given them much bigger roles. Like even Baron Zemo. Like when Baron Zemo was in Winter Soldier, I think he was only in one movie, right? He kind of just came and went, and was like, oh, I guess they're done with Baron Zemo. But at least they did something with him, right?
Yeah, and same with George Petrock, which is played by George St. Pierre. They
Right.
brought him back in a way that felt like he was never a major character in Captain America and the Winter Soldier, but they brought
Right.
him back for this, and I felt like it worked.
Yeah.
So
And the thing is I mean, obviously I love these stories done as movies, but there is something to be said, like we talked about earlier. There's something to be said for a TV show where you can fit in more stories per year. And even though I did enjoy Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to some extent, one of the things that drove me crazy about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is that, you've got like 1,500 or something other Marvel characters they could have used, and they kind of instead just made up these new characters, and then they didn't really explore the Marvel universe as much as they could have. I felt, it's like they should have been doing with Agents of Shield what they're doing now with these shows, which is give these other superhero characters more of a spotlight.
I always assumed the case that why they didn't do that was budget issues. I was just like,
That's
oh,
probably part.
they probably can't afford those actors. That's what my assumption was.
That's probably part of it. You're right. Like, and I know that I don't know if you guys have talked about this, but I know that Marvel Studios was for a long time separate from Marvel TV. Like
Yes.
there was Agents of Shield, and then there was Netflix, which was separate, and then there was like Hulu, which is also separate. And as far as I know, did you ever see that show Hellstorm or Hellstrom or whatever it's called?
No, I
Okay,
know that's one of the ones I have not
yeah,
watched.
no one's seen it.
Yeah.
This show is a Marvel property, and no one on Earth has seen it. But apparently, it was the last property done under the old deal, and now everything going forward from WandaVision on is all going to be integrated into one thing. And so I think at least the continuity will be better going forward.
Which is weird because, like, if you think about it, the MCU started in 2008 with Iron Man, more or less, and
Right.
these TV properties popped up after that. You think they would have already, like, planned to integrate that into the MCU, but they didn't. I feel that's so weird.
Well, what's even weirder is Joss Whedon directed Avengers 1 and 2. As
Yes.
far as I know, his brother was the executive producer or showrunner of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And Joss Whedon came out in the public and said, "Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, like we don't even acknowledge Agents of Shield. It's not even in our continuity." And it's like, what a diss to his brother. You know what I mean?
Oh,
So
well,
yeah,
based on everything that's coming out about Joss Whedon, that seems pretty on brand.
yeah. It can lead to death, but there's been so many stories now that it's kind of hard to. But I mean, I still love his writing, but
That's one of those
yeah,
things
probably
where it's like, how do you separate the artist from the art? It's tough to do, like,
right, right,
but
right,
I'm guilty of it. I'm watching Buffy right now, and he is the creator, for
right.
lack of a better term, of that universe. So it's like,
And he's also one of them. Like every script came through him. So even if he didn't write it, he did a pass at it. So he's basically the Stan Lee of that show, right? So
yeah. And it's tough because I'm like, wow, you sound like a real dick, and you sound like you really like harass Charisma Carpenter. It's
right,
like, how do I support, my love for the show and her role on the show while also not supporting you? It's tough. This is one of
right.
these gray areas. Ugh.
Hmm.
Um, but anyways, we're getting off topic there. But I was just gonna say, so yeah, Sharon Carter. I'm excited to see where that goes. I mean, I'm trying to think if we have any other major aspects of the show to talk about. We've covered. the racism in the show, which is big. I guess we didn't cover Bucky's resolution, but it wasn't much of a
Well,
resolution.
what was the resolution with him? I don't even remember.
He went to Mr. Nakajima and admitted that he killed his son, which was one of the flashbacks from the first episode.
Right.
You are
And you know what's
forgiven
funny?
you're forgiven if you forgot that because it was so brief.
Yeah, and I remember he told him, and I remember the guy's reaction, and then I remember him walking by him in the restaurant. But what happened? What did he say? What did the guy say? I don't even remember.
I don't remember either.
Exactly. I'm like, wait a minute, did I like fall asleep? What happened? Yeah, that was weird.
And then
And
at
yeah,
the same
they dropped
and
the ball on that.
and the psychologist picks up his list and like, the list of people and it has all the names crossed out and she just, nods in affirmation and walks away. Like it's like they like mechanically touched on all these beats. It's just
Right,
so
right.
uh
Oh, you know what? You know what? Okay, here's the thing. Look, let's just get really harsh for a minute here. I can forgive quite a bit, okay? But you're absolutely right when you describe it as being mechanical because I think a lot of times, even if you have a bad script can be covered up by, good lighting and good music and even a good actor. And sometimes you can be tricked into thinking like, oh yeah, this is fine. And then when you go back and watch it again, you go, well, that wasn't very good. In this episode, there was moments, just like you said, where I could feel the actors like, okay, I want you to look at that guy and nod or, say this line. But I felt like it was so insincere. Like I felt like some of these actors were like what's his name? Bucky, Sebastian.
Yeah.
When he's like walking by that restaurant, he looks in and he kind of like nods or whatever he does. It just felt so like amateur.
Yeah.
Like some Joe Blow director was like, okay, walk over here, look in the window. Okay, now walk away. But it was so like phony. It didn't feel like real at all. It just felt like a substitute for a real emotion.
Totally. There's something completely insincere about particularly Bucky's resolution. I think Sam had it a bit better off. But yeah, not impressed. Again, as much as I loved the progression of US Agent this season, last episode, extremely poor showing for him.
Right.
And that's not nothing against the actor, but just the way those scenes were structured in the order. Like, he's fighting alongside Bucky, no consequences, and all of a sudden now he's hanging out with Valentina, and adopting this. What? Like, it's just
no
poor.
Did you guys talk about Countessa Valentina, whatever her name is?
De Allegra. We talked about her last week. A bit, it was obviously a small role, so we didn't get too much into it. Again, this week she has a small role, but I think the consensus last week between Jolie and I was between her and Catherine Hahn, I am very excited to see where the MCU goes.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, this was spoiled by, of course, my mother. She's like,
of course.
Oh, I heard that Elaine from Seinfeld is on a Marvel property. And I'm like, oh, well, I wonder what it could be, So it was completely spoiled. And here's the thing is and this is the Seinfeld curse, is that all I see is Elaine. But I still think Julia Louis-Dreyfus is a good actress. And so you could see that, in her delivery. Like, there was the one part where I think she was sitting with whatever her name is, and she was like, what is taking him so long, or whatever she said.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, she's great, right? She's hilarious.
She choose her scenes.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh man, yeah. I'm excited for her. To be actually, now that I think about going forward, between this show and possibly WandaVision, we have 3 female characters that are potentially a really big threat going forward.
Right.
Which is Valentina, Sharon Carter, and then Agatha was a bit more subdued, but they'd be foolish not to use her again.
Sure, they will for sure.
So it's so exciting to me that we get a lot of these female villains going forward. Which, I mean, you could argue that we had Cate Blanchett in Thor Ragnarok. Right. Was it Cate Blanchett? Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've had female villains, but I feel like maybe going forward these are going to be like a collective Thanos, just like that overarching villain. I would love to see that.
And it's funny because now that I'm thinking about it, I think one of the reasons why we might be disappointed by the way that the storylines went is that obviously when you have a movie, it's only 2 hours. When you have a traditional Netflix show, you drop a season in one day, right?
Yeah.
And you can marathon it one day. But one of the good things about spreading it out is the buzz builds over time, right? You can talk about it every week. But I guess one of the downsides is that if we would have walked in and watched a 2-hour movie, we would have walked out and been like, we probably would have forgot everything that we like. By the 2-hour mark, you kind of forget. You're like, I was hoping they'd do more with John Walker, but they didn't. But because it was spread out over 6 or 7 or 8 weeks, you have all that time to think about, oh, what are they going to do with John Walker? What are they going to do with Baron Zemo? And then when it doesn't play out, it's really disappointing. And so I think it's almost like they're going to have to readapt to doing a weekly show because the feedback from the audience is instantaneous.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like they have to. I don't even know what the conclusion I'm coming to is, but it's like they have to be more careful because they have to anticipate. Okay, if we set up, what's his name that played Quicksilver?
Evan Peters.
Yeah, there's going to be this level of expectation, so we can't deliver this. We have to anticipate people are going to expect X, Y, and Z. We have to give it to them, right? So I think that's one thing they're going to have to adapt to.
Oh yeah, I think they're learning some lessons. I think from this show in particular. Sorry, my lighting. I've been trying to fight my lighting.
I know. There's nothing. Yeah, I know. Like you're completely blown out, but there's nothing you can do. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. But yeah, no, I agree with you completely. Like it's just going forward. I think they're learning some lessons from this show. WandaVision for the better part was an extremely intriguing and interesting success and a mystery, except for that last episode. But
yeah.
Again, you unwrap the gift, the mystery's gone.
Right.
This show, I'm gonna postulate that I think this would have been better as a 2.5-hour movie.
Yeah, you're right. Take the best elements and fix the bad elements. You're right, and just make a 2-hour movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this would have been an effective film, and I mean, like I love Anthony Mackie, and I like Sebastian Stan too. I liked him better in the Captain America films. I think this is my least favorite performance of his. He's very dulled out in this series. But I loved seeing Anthony Mackie grow. I loved, his character arc. I loved his commentary on racism in America. And I freaking loved the way he integrated the Captain America suit with the wings. That was so badass. And it was so fluid, like that, like quick fight scene he had with Carly. And it's
sure.
I'm excited to see more of him.
But now one thing I got to point out, and again, I can forgive a lot because I love superheroes. I love superhero movies. But when he has like the duffel bag of his suit and the guy's like, don't you want your suit? He's like, you can keep it. I'm like, gee, I wonder what's going to happen next. But it's also like, that thing's worth like $2.5 billion. Maybe you want to like, take that with you. I don't know. I just thought that was a little bit melodramatic. And then I thought it was funny that he showed up in this new costume. Like, when did he have time to make this costume? But whatever. Again, I can forgive it. But I thought it was funny.
Are you talking about Falcon?
Yeah.
I thought he got his new suit from Wakanda. I thought that's who shipped it.
Oh, maybe it was. I must have totally missed that because when he showed up in the suit, I was like, where did this come from?
It was the end of the last episode, I believe. He got like that briefcase on the bed.
Oh, yes, right. Yes. Okay.
Again, though, you are forgiven for not noticing that because the damn storytelling is not effective.
Right.
So yeah, I don't want to get too negative because I feel like that probably turns off listeners. But there's some great, elements to the show, but I'm sorry. I'm happy this show's over.
Well, that's the thing is that my first impression was this is a big come down from WandaVision, and I was kind of right. Like, there's no way you can follow WandaVision, and I feel like WandaVision was the most experimental thing Marvel did, and one of the best things they did, and now we're kind of back to status quo Marvel. So I'm disappointed.
Well, so I am excited in a couple of weeks to see Loki. I think that's, again, now that we're getting into an interesting concept again, a little
right.
It's not completely experimental like WandaVision, but it's certainly a lot more universe building.
Right.
And so I'm excited for Loki. I think that's going to wash the bad taste of the show out of my mouth.
Yeah, and based on the trailers, Loki was the one I was most excited for. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to Loki.
So I have to ask the question because I have you on here. There's been talks. I think I was reading an article on IGN about Falcon and the Winter Soldier and possibly Loki. They have been submitted as I don't know which category, but basically they were not submitted as miniseries, which means that there is potential for there to be a season 2 of this show. If there is, A, would you want to see it? B, what would you want to see in a second season of Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
Well, first they'll probably call it Captain America and Winter Soldier, right?
Yes,
Or
totally.
Captain American Bucky or whatever. I don't know. I guess as far as what I want to see, again, I like the rivalry, so I'd like to see them. It'd be nice to see them in constantly butting heads with U.S. Agent. That would be cool, right? And kind of just continuing that on. Bringing back Baron Zemo and doing more with him would be nice, right? And then just Madripoor. That's a whole. That's I don't know if you know about Madripoor. That's from the Wolverine, the Wolverine solo series, right? Like, there's so much to explore there.
That was when he was a Patch.
Exactly, right.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Jolie and I talked about this, but there was a rumor going around last year that in Madripoor we were supposed to get an introduction to Omega Red, and I freaked out. I was like, "Oh,
sure.
that would be so cool!"
Right.
And that would have kind of given us a soft introduction into mutants.
Sure.
We didn't get that, which is fine.
Yeah.
Maybe for season 2 though. Maybe they'll run across him in season 2 at Madripoor.
That's the thing, is like there's so many, like I said, there's 800 Captain America comics. There's I don't know how many Wolverine comics, but there's almost infinite amount of stories to draw from, right? So like even Omega Red, they could keep that going forever, So there's plenty more where this came from, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is probably the logical step for a season 2 is more stuff with U.S. Agent. Sharon Carter, I would like to see her return, but I would also like to see Sharon Carter step it up and start fucking with the Avengers on a broad scale.
Sure.
So I could see that going either way. Preferably, I'd like her to become a big bad, but like she's also a human, so like, how big of a bad can you be? So I'm interested to see where that goes, man. But yeah, I'm not looking forward to watching this season again anytime soon.
No. The one thing I want to say too before we wrap up is, how do you see the lineup for a future Avengers movie now? Because the way it's going, it's probably going to be Doctor Strange, Falcon, Winter Soldier, Wanda, maybe Vision, maybe Spider-Man, Ant-Man.
Ant-Man. Gosh, there's got to be a few more. It's Wasp, maybe.
Yeah, Wasp. Yep. That's probably it, right?
The Guardians, I could see either being in or out. I don't know. I guess they would include them because the whole pretense of the Avengers is all of your heroes together. So I guess Guardians bring you up to 12, but they kind of function as a unit most of the time.
Yeah.
So I think it's time to start bringing in some mutants.
Oh yeah.
I think it's time to start maybe doing Avengers versus X-Men.
Oh yeah, like and here's the thing. I'm not even. I don't think I even really read that new series. I know the one from the 80s. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't excite me as much, but I'm right now rewatching. I just rewatched Wolverine, the second one, The Wolverine, and I'm gonna rewatch Days of Future Past and Logan. And I love all these characters, but X-Men is my favorite. So I cannot wait for them to do X-Men.
What did you think of the Wolverine? It's not bad.
No, it's not bad. I think it's like 3/4 good. Basically, it's an adaptation of the miniseries by Chris Claremont and Frank Miller, and everything they adapted and used was good, and everything they added was bad. Like the big robot Silver Samurai, and it was just stupid. The backstory with the guy was okay, but not great.
Yeah.
And what's her name? What's the girl's name? Viper.
Yeah, Viper was poor.
Yeah, she's okay, but just didn't fit,
Yeah.
But
have you when you watch Days of Future Past again, are you going to watch the original or the Rogue cut?
I forgot about that. I think it's going to be whatever's available on Disney Plus. Do you know which cut that is? Or
I think it's just the original.
I'll try to dig up the Rogue cut then. Yeah.
It's different. I don't know if I like it better, but it's different.
Well, and the thing is that movie, like the X-Men movies are all okay, but like as far as the team movies go, that one is by far the best.
I agree. I think that's
Yeah.
the best X-Men movie, which again is not saying much.
Yeah.
I give it like, I mean, I was gaga about it at the time when it came out because I was like, oh, they finally did something right.
Right.
But compared to the Avengers movies, no, it's
No, but to be honest, I mean, I don't even think this. I think the actual stories in the Avengers movies are not spectacular. Other than like, I think Infinity War is the best one.
oh
But the first one and the second one, I don't think the stories are that great. I think it's more like there's great scenes and great moments. But I think the plot of Days of Future Past is better, personally.
yeah, I agree. The plot and the story of Days of Future Past and the novelty of bringing in two casts together, they freaking lucked out with that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you're right.
Oh man, that's something that nobody else can claim right now.
Right.
But the action scenes pale in comparison to the Avengers. Pale.
Yeah, you're right. And this is a whole other episode, but I am not a fan of Bryan Singer. I never was.
No.
And that's the thing about him is I think he got lucky a few times, but he's not a good director. And so
The only thing he got right, and it's because he is a minority, I think he has that perspective, is he was great at the us versus them analogy that underlies the X-Men. That's
right.
The only thing I will give him that I think he did a great job on. Everything else, action, set pieces,
dialogue is and I'll give him credit for casting. I mean,
yes.
Hugh Jackman, Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart. I mean, some of those choices are, no one could have done a better job like than Hugh Jackman, right? So yeah, I'll give him credit for that.
Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, you're right. That's a totally different episode.
Right.
But yeah, I think that covers everything. I think we've sufficiently shamed Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but also look forward to brighter days.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's kind of just what I thought it would be. So that's all I can say.
Yeah. Well, just to wrap up, again, I want to thank Mike-EL for guesting with me today. We hope G.I. Jolie will be back with us soon. Until then, keep it loud, keep it at full volume. Thanks, guys.
All right. See ya. Thanks again.